Hi, my name is Lisa Cohen, and you may know me as Two Fears. I have an experience to share with you that has changed my entire life and my entire thought process about how I travel, and I think you should listen closely. On Sunday, July the 31st, I attended a play at the arena stage. I met a group of friends there and fellow Rotarians, and we attended the play called The American Prophet. It was about Frederick Douglass, and it was great, by the way. When the play was over, as usual, we stayed out in the lobby for a while and chatted and walked down the steps and out to the front and proceeded home. My way home was by Uber that day. I didn't drive. There's very bad parking in Southwest DC, and I just didn't want to bother with it. Well, I think that was my first mistake. When the Uber driver got there, I turned around and said goodbye to my friends and that I would call her when I got home and for her to do the same. Her husband was going to pick her up, and the Uber driver, when I opened the door, immediately said, "Your friend can come." And I said, "No, that's okay. She has a ride home." I climbed into the Uber. It was a small car, and the Uber driver was immediately complimenting me on how beautiful I was, how I looked, what I had on. And he even described it. He said, "Wow, that's a beautiful jacket you have on. That's a gorgeous black and white dress you have on." He said very detailed things, and I didn't think anything of it. And I just said, "Thanks, I appreciate that," um, and started the ride. Okay, so one thing that I noticed too is that he was driving rather slowly, which I figured that, yeah, he might not know his way around. He had already told me in a few sentences that, "Hey, I'm from Baltimore originally. I'm here driving. The business in Baltimore is not great. It's so poor and so forth and so on. And that's why I'm here driving." The second thing that he said was that he did I want some water. I just gotten in the car. He asked me if I wanted some water. And I said, "No, thank you. I have water in my bag." I had a face mask on, by the way, because that is one of the regulations that you have to sign, check before you get into the Uber. He did not have a face mask on, by the way. When I said, "No, thank you, I do not want any water. I have water in my bag," which I really did, he said, "Oh, wow, I really wish you would have taken that water." And I didn't think about it. I just went on talking. He started talking about his sister, who was an investigator for the federal government. Stay tuned for part two. This is part two. The Uber driver continued to talk and talk and talk, and he asked me a lot of questions. And one of the questions that he asked me was I a student? And that I looked like a student. And I said, "No, I've already finished school." And what was my major? I was an English major. I was talking about undergrad. "Oh, okay, I love English. I love English." And he started to talk about English and uh, writers, authors that he liked, and so forth. And I kind of just hung back and paid attention to where we were going. By this time, we were going toward the Kennedy Center, and underneath the Kennedy Center cover, which is Rock Creek Parkway, goes under that. And I noticed that we were going extremely slow at that point in time, and I was getting worried. We were going so slow that it felt like we were going at least um, 20 miles an hour. And I noticed that a lot of cars were passing us. And then a white van came at his same speed and drove next to him. And I looked over at the white van and I saw a very irate person. And I don't know the ethnicity of this person. He was a very dark-skinned person, but he looked to be Middle Eastern or something like that. I don't know. But I got really worried. This Uber driver then lowered the window and shook his head and started mouthing something to him. And then he says, "Okay, I got this. I got this." And doing his hand like that. And then he rolled the window back up immediately. As soon as he did that, I sat back and I reached my arm over and pulled the door handle to see if it would pop open, and it did not. I pushed the window to see if it would go up, and it did not. I reached the left side over the small car, pulled it, did not open, and then I pushed the window and it did not open. And at that point, I became extremely terrified, extremely claustrophobic. And all I thought about is, I got to get the fuck out of here. I got to get the fuck out of here. When the Uber driver put the window up, the white van dropped back. Now we were going slow, but he slowed down even more and we sped up. And the Uber driver tilted his head back and said, "Do you still trust me?" Part 3. Part 3. I'm doing everything that I can at this moment to maintain my calm after realizing that I am trapped in that back seat. The windows can't come down and the doors cannot open. And this man had just said to me, after I asked him, by the way, what happened? When I said, what happened, referring to why was he talking to the other driver, he said, oh, no, he was just telling me my lights were out. And I knew that was a lie. I slid to the middle of the middle console and sat there and I looked forward and I was just contemplating how I was going to get out and still continuing to think, I'm getting the fuck out of here. As we passed the Watergate and came up to the corner of Virginia and Beach Drive, I realized that the next stretch of road was going to be through the park, and that is all woods, a woodsy area, and it is really secluded. And not much traffic travels along that road. And I realized that whatever I did, I needed to think very quickly and get out of that car ASAP. The Uber driver, on the other hand, was very comfortable in his skin. He in his mind felt like he had everything under control and that I was trapped in that back seat with nowhere to go. He continued to drive and the traffic started to slow in front of us. The light had turned red. There were 2 cars in front of us and there were 2 lanes to the right of us, exactly on the passenger side. I then asked the Uber driver, can you let me out right here? And while he was answering me, I stuck my left leg through the 2 chairs and reached over the seat and grabbed the handle of the door and pushed the door open. And I honestly don't know how I got my right leg over that chair and flung myself out of that car. But I had on 6-inch heels and I was now standing in the middle of the street and the cars had just started to move, including him. I proceeded a little forward. A car had just passed me and the Porsche that was right beside me almost hit me. He banged on brakes and said, what the fuck? Part 4. Part 4. First of all, I would like to thank everybody for the kindness and the kind words that you are showing me through this. And I thank you for your patience as well. Last night I was very exhausted. I couldn't continue taping. I had a lot of phone calls and people reaching out to me. So I do plan on completing this today. So I just really appreciate you and all of your questions, and I will get to them, and I will follow up on all and everything, because I think this is a very important story to tell, because it needs to be told. So I've just pushed the door open. I've somehow gotten my right leg over that seat in that middle of that console and leapt out of that car. and I didn't close the door. There was a little bag of something that fell out that was the driver's. And I'll get back to that bag and other bags like that that were in the car um, later. But I got out of the car. I ran through the traffic. There were two lanes that I had to get over to the curb. And I got there and I started to proceed running up the street when I heard a voice say, Lisa, Lisa. And I didn't look back. And I didn't look back because I know Uber drivers know your name. And I knew there was that van still lingering in the back, and they probably knew my name too. But it was when I heard, that's Lisa, that I then turned around and I saw that it was my friend Ellie, who I had left back at the theater waiting for her husband, who said that he would be along in 20 minutes. So I'm looking more closely because I want to make sure that that is Ellie. I know her voice, but I wanted to make sure, and it was her. And the lane that we were in was that far left lane, and Ellie's husband was blocking the traffic because he was making his way through the second lane to the first lane to make the turn onto Virginia Avenue and sit on that corner to pick me up. I then got into his car, and the first thing he said to me was, "What did he do to you?" And stay tuned for part five. Part five. To make a long story short, the ride home was pretty on and off for me for the fact that I was in shock. I couldn't really talk to them. They were asking me questions, mainly checking in quite frequently to see if I was okay. And in fact, they were actually a bit in shock themselves because they were only 2 car lengths behind me and they witnessed the entire act. Once I got to the house and came in, I realized that my husband was not in the living room. He had already gone to bed, and I started to call his name and go upstairs and wake him up. And when I woke him up, he knew immediately that there was something wrong with me. I wasn't crying, but I was hyperventilating to some degree, and he got up and we came downstairs and I called the police. It was really strange when I called the police because it didn't feel like it was the police when I was talking to them for some reason. I think it was just my brain not trusting things at that time. And I literally did not trust that I was talking to the police, although I was describing everything that had happened. So, of course, when I came in, I had to plug up my phone because it almost had no juice. But after I got off the phone with the dispatcher said that the police were on their way. My husband is sitting here with me, and my first thing to do was to go to the app and pull up the man's picture because I wanted to show him. I pull up the picture because the description that I gave, I think, was pretty on point to the dispatcher. But, I really wasn't sure because I couldn't get a full frontal visual of his face because of the where I was sitting. And although he didn't have a mask, he never turned straight around and looked at me except for one time, and that was when I got into the car. So when I pull up this picture and showed my husband, the first thing he said was, "Ew, he's ugly." And the only thing I could think is that this man is evil and he's the devil and he's got to get caught. So after I showed my husband the picture, I immediately called Uber because what happened was that I got a notification for them that they saw that my ride ended early, and there were three things to choose from. Was the car broken down? Was I hurt? Or did anybody need medical attention? And there was a number, and I called the number. When I called the number, I talked to someone and told them exactly what happened. After I told them what happened, I actually started shuffling through my phone to look at the Uber driver's picture again, but he had taken it down already. Stay tuned for part six. Part 6, and once again, I want to thank everybody for all of your kind words and mostly for sharing the story, sharing the video, and sharing by word of mouth. Please don't forget to share by word of mouth because it's your friends and your family that you don't want to come up missing. Please. The first officer to come in was a female who took my statement, and in that statement, it included everything that I basically told you, as well as the information from the Uber app, which included the license plate number of the vehicle and the duration of time that that Uber driver has been driving for Uber, the star value of that driver, and there was supposed to be a picture there, but that Uber driver had taken the picture down. When the second police officer came in, she was also a female, and what they did is basically ran the tags of that car and noticed that it was a very short duration. But the first thing about it was that the car was a rental from a rental company, which they said was illegal. The second thing was that the Uber driver had been driving for Uber for only 7 days at that time. Since then, on Tuesday, it was found out that the renter of the car and the Uber driver were two different people. The third officer to come in was the lead officer, and he was this big, no-nonsense guy who was just like serious. And I embraced that because I needed somebody to take me very, very seriously. And he wanted me to explain to him exactly what happened. I immediately started to tell my story once again. I did not mind at all. I told him, he listened, he took notes, and I could see that he was absorbing it. When I finished and he stood up, he simply said, "I believe you. And I am going to call the detectives right now." I was glad to hear that he believed me because honestly, as calm as I wasn't hysterical, I wasn't crying, I wasn't bloody, I wasn't disheveled. I still had on the same thing that I had on when I left the theater, except for I had taken off my jacket, I had on the dress, and I still was wearing the heels. A detective, a junior detective in a white shirt showed up, and stay tuned for part 7. Part 7. When the detective and the junior detective came into my house, I let them in, they immediately took charge of the case. And basically, the officers stepped all the way back, but they stayed to the side. And the lead detective came straight to my face, and he was not at all friendly, or he was very grim. It didn't feel comfortable, I must say, but I understand how necessary these things are, so I didn't let it bother me. He said, the lead detective said to me, the junior detective was standing to the side, and the lead detective said to me, "Hello, Miss Cohen. Is there anywhere that we can go and talk privately?" And due to the fact that this is my house, I felt like, hey, how private can it get? I mean, the thought was, why don't the officers leave? If you want to talk to me privately, you can stay right here. But the truth was, they wanted to take me into a different place. So they said, "Let's go out on the porch." And no problem. I went out on the porch. So when we got on the porch, the question, "Miss Cohen, tell me what happened." And so I said to him, "Where do you want me to start? Do you want me to start from the moment I got to the theater or the moment I left the theater?" And he said, "Just start from when you left this theater." And so I did. I told him everything that I had told the last 3 people that I talked to. And once I told them everything without hesitation. The interview was over. They said, thank you. The white shirt had walked up. He said, thank you, Miss Cohen. We will get back to you by the end of the week and let you know what's going on. If you have any questions, please contact us. I came back into the house. I got cards, information, and everything from the officers. On the cards, it had the report number and it had the lead officer's business card. So that was it for that. In the next video, I'm actually going to talk about all of these red flags, that came up that I could have taken if I trusted my instincts from the very beginning in part 8. Part 8. In this video, I'm going to talk about the 10 red flags that came to me before the ride, during, or mostly in hindsight, that this was not going to be a good ride. Red flag number 1. When I opened the Uber car door and I turned around and said goodbye to my friend who was standing all the way back by the theater, the Uber driver leaned over and said, "She can come, tell her to come too." Red flag 2, the reason why I saw the Uber driver's face fully is because he was not wearing a mask. And before I caught the Uber, I had to sign a policy saying that I would have on a mask because it is the policy of Uber to wear a mask. Red flag 3, before I could even close the car door, the Uber driver began complimenting me and describing what I was wearing. He even went as far as telling me that I like ethnic people. I like everybody, even ethnic people, and he reiterated that several times. He described the fact that he thought that I looked like a student, a college student. He also described the fact that he thought that I looked professional and that I was slim. Red flag number 5, and this was in hindsight. I realized later that the reason why this Uber driver was describing everything that I was wearing and telling me that he liked ethnic people, he was really talking to someone through the headset that he had on his head. And the reason I know that the headset was on is because it was lit up on the side. Red flag number 5, before we even rode 2 blocks away from the theater, the Uber driver offered me some water. Now, wasn't water sitting in the console, in the cup holders, but it was out of sight. Either way, I said, no, thank you. And he offered again. And I said, no, I'm fine. I have water in my bag. A few seconds later, he replied, "I really wish you had taken the water." Red flag number 6, on several occasions, mostly in the beginning of the ride, the Uber was turning to go to the left in the left lane, and those left lanes all led to go to the way of Virginia. And I kept saying, no, you belong in this middle lane, go straight, and I was directing him. He then told me that his GPS was giving him trouble, and when I looked up at the dashboard, his GPS was black. It had already mapped out black mapping on it, which wasn't going to my house. Stay tuned for part 9. Part 9, red flag number 7. Red flag number 7 came to me midway the trip, and I started getting a weird, eerie feeling. And it was because the Uber driver was driving extremely slow. Right before we had made that turn to the right, which got us onto Rock Creek Parkway, we had already been going kind of slow, but we were weaving through traffic, and I thought first that it was because the GPS, and I was still directing him, and I was literally coaxing him more to the right so that he would stay on the course that I was trying to tell him. And he did stay on that course. In hindsight, I realize now it was for him to keep the van tracking him, up with him. And I think that was where the irateness of the driver of the van came in, because now we were off course. Red flag number 8 is that the Uber driver, was talking a lot about his family more during the middle and the ending to what happened. And he was bringing up the fact that he had a daughter. I mentioned earlier that he had talked about his sister, but yes, he did talk about his sister and his mother. And he was saying that, oh yeah, they were the reason for his 12-year divorce. But for the daughter, it was as if he brought her up 3 times in a positive way, and it was as if he was trying to gain my trust. I say that he was trying to gain my trust because he looked at me more youthful than I actually am. I am 54 years old. So for him, I was the age of his daughter when he looked at me because he thought that I was a college student. Red flag number 9, as I thought back when he had offered me the water, I had thought nothing of it before. But at this point in the ride, I was wondering why he made that statement about, he really wished I had taken the water. And now he was saying to me, at this point in the ride, do I still trust him now the way he said it? Part 10, red flag 10. So this is a hindsight red flag. In hindsight, before I got in the car, I would have looked in the front seat and down on the floor. So the reason why I say that is because when I got out of the car, something came out with me, and it was a bag. As I climbed over, I saw on the floor several bags that looked exactly like the bag on the seat. Though I could see them and I could, imagine that there were about 6 of those bags and then the one on the seat, I had no clue what was in them. They just gave me the shape that they were all alike. And I could speculate that they all weighed the same. So when I got out of the car and the one fell on the ground beneath my feet, I guess I kind of stumbled it over it. I did have on heels, and I think I was stepping on it. I lifted my foot up and I was like, what is that? I only did that for a brief period of time because I was out of there, and as soon as cars stopped, I was running across that street. So it validated for me that I really did see bags, and they were in that passenger side right there in front of the seat. I knew that I had seen what I had seen. These bags all looked alike. And like I said, I didn't know what they were, but I did see something round on the ground beneath my feet for a brief moment. So when I say round, it looked like a round piece of plastic that looked like it was flexible and lightweight. What validated that a bag had fallen out the car when I got out was the fact that my friend's husband said to me when I was in the car on the way home, I saw a bag fall out of the car when you were climbing out. And I said, oh, you saw that. So what I'm saying is that maybe if I had inspected the car before I got into it and looked up front to see if anything looked off, I would have probably judged that up there looked weird. And I would have probably said, no, I'm not getting in the car.